All right, I think we're live.
Hey everyone, welcome to MODcast Monday. I'm Kristen, this is Mike, and we are two of the admins over here on Breed America. And we do this cool thing on Mondays where the mods, we just kind of get together and we do shows. It's always about something different. But today we are going to highlight uh, Mental Health Monday. And it is very important to Mike and I. We were talking this morning just about our own struggles and just kind of were like, hey, we should do a show one day. And then it just happened, right? So,
Yep.
so Mike, can you tell everybody a little bit about, I know you did a show last week on mental health. So can you tell us a little bit why it's so important to you? We talk about that tonight.
Yeah. Um, I feel like it's important to a lot of us on the back end and a lot of the people in the group. I feel like we all have our own different struggles. I feel like a lot of times when these things get talked about, we can talk about depression, which is really wide reaching, but a lot of people have anxiety too. A lot of people have various different conditions. And in today's world, it's really easy to be affected by one of the things going on. And that's why it's more important than ever to talk about some of these things.
I agree. How do you think that mental health ties into what we're doing at Breathe America?
It's a huge thing. A lot of the practices that you get into in dealing with your own mental health help you control your actions and help you control your interpretation and all that type of stuff. And I think Breathe America is a lot about the same type of things on a societal level, right? We need to center ourselves individually in order to partake in productive conversation across all these spectrums that we talk about.
I have this saying that I've always heard is that hurt people hurt people. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, that kind of goes along with like, if we can't fix ourselves, how are we going to fix our country?
Yep. Yeah. I think a
So,
lot of the people that have been affected by these things the most develop a lot of different defense mechanisms and ways that they protect themselves. A lot of them aren't necessarily healthy. Um,
Patrick
so it
says
causes
so true.
yeah, it causes them to lash out at others and get defensive and get spiteful in the wrong times. And you know,
Would you agree that that a lot of times anger stems from fear?
fear and whether people want to consider insecurity to fall in with fear or not, it's those two things. I think a lot of times it's insecurity, which, if you want to view that as fear of how others perceive you or how you perceive yourself, it can be.
Right. I know with my own struggles, a lot of times when I lash out, you know, it's perceived as just this angry, violent thing, and it's really not. It's really coming from such a place of hurt and just being terrified.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that because I've always been that way, it's easy for me to see that in other people. Like a lot
Yeah.
of times in the comment section when I see somebody just completely lashing out or generalizing a large group of people or just going in on somebody, I can see their hurt and I can see their insecurities, and it makes it a little bit easier to talk to them.
And I saw that, Carrie. I completely agree. A lot of that's the defense mechanisms I'm talking about. Putting up walls keeps yourself safe, but it doesn't always allow you to develop new relationships or keep some of the ones you have.
That's true. I recently have just struggled. Since COVID, I've put a lot of walls up because I'm so, it really terrified me to lose people. It really terrified me to have to distance myself from the people that I love. And so it was just easier for me if I could just, push them away. And I know that sounds horrible, but, everybody deals with things differently. And you can never judge someone. Like I saw this meme that said, oh, you right now is when you can tell who your friends are, and I'm like, not really, because your friends are going through stuff too. Like everybody's going through stuff.
Yeah. I think it's important to remember that we all take different things differently too. So, even if you think COVID isn't as big a deal as it's made up to be on the news, one of the people you care about the most could be scared to death to go outside.
Exactly.
It's everybody has different backgrounds and different triggers and different things that affect them different ways, and I don't think we're often conscious about that.
So can I share a little bit about my story with everybody?
Please
Just take a
do.
second. So I have generalized anxiety disorder, and I also have OCD, which um, I'll get into that later. But OCD is not what a lot of people think it is. And one of my biggest triggers is sickness and germs. I'm always, hey, Carrie. Was that Christopher that said hi a minute ago? Hi, John. So I'm terrified. Like even before COVID, I didn't leave my house in the winter months because I was so scared of the flu and the RSV, and I have small children, and it's just the whole thing. And then so when COVID hit, that's like literally my worst nightmare. It's everything that I've ever been terrified of that everybody told me I was crazy for so many years, right? Like,
Right.
oh, nothing's bad's gonna happen, come out of your house. Um, so in a sense, I was already quarantined. And then when COVID hit, it just sent me into this spiral where I was out of control. I was angry. Anybody that didn't want to stay in their house and wear masks, I just went off on them. I was lashing out at my family members. And I was in a really, really bad place. And it
Yeah.
took something significant to pull me out of it. But I did eventually learn a very, very important lesson that, I can't expect everyone else to live their lives according to my mental health. I have to get my mental health under control so that I react properly to to the world around me. And I think that's another thing too is we all expect everybody just to know like, hey, I'm sick, I have mental health, you're supposed to know and you're supposed to wear your mask because I'm terrified, and that's just not how the world works.
Right.
So I've been that angry person. I'm still that angry person sometimes. I do have a temper, but it has given me such a perspective to be able to talk to people on the group and help people and try to get people to see that other side to everything.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, like I said, it's everybody has their own triggers. Everybody has their own things that they're dealing with. I think just like you have a deep problem with this COVID stuff going around and being such a threat, right? There's a lot of people that, you know, they've personally experienced police violence or one of the other issues going on. And I think we often fail to see in some of these conversations we have online just where other people may be coming from. We don't get to that human element enough, you know?
That's true. And I know that mental health is something that's not talked about. I mean, we talk about it, but do we really talk about it? Like, we say, oh, mental health is an issue. Oh, I have anxiety and things like that, but we don't really talk about it. And I've found, like, just through living my life, that it makes people uncomfortable when I talk about it. And most people don't really understand where I'm coming from. They don't know what to tell me. Like I've had people tell me, maybe you should get back on your medicine. Maybe you should, you know, they have 1,000 different ways they can fix me. And if there was an easy fix, I would be there. But medicine it's not a cure all. It creates so many more problems. And it's just an endless cycle, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And then you have somebody that comes in and is like, just one of my favorites is like, just get out of your head. You're not your mind. And it's really hard to do that. And I know I need to do that. Um, I know it's important to do that, but it's really, really hard to hear that when you're in a bad place.
Yeah. And I see some of these comments coming up. Steve, loss is a big trigger. It's a big trauma.
It is.
I've lost a lot of people in my life too, and I completely understand. In my early 20s, I was not doing so well. I've lost a lot of friends and a lot of loved ones, and it can have a very, very deep effect.
That was probably one of my lowest points. Was 5 years ago when I lost somebody very close to me. So in a way, I think that maybe could be part of the reason why my OCD is probably the worst it's ever been. Because one of the things that I do is I project my anxiety onto everybody else, and I worry for everyone. Like, I genuinely care. I genuinely worry. And, when you tell somebody be careful on your bike, and then they get in a wreck on their bike, it's devastating. It's absolutely devastating.
I can relate very heavily. I know you know this, but not too many people out there do. But I just lost a pretty good friend of mine 2 weeks ago to a motorcycle accident. And, it's always so unexpected. It's one of the worst ways to lose somebody is just in one of those things that's out of nowhere. You have no time to deal with anything. Not that it's easier when somebody's, say, sick or dying, especially not now with like COVID, where half the time you can't be by their side.
Right.
But it changes your life upside down in a moment.
I'll never forget when I got the phone call that he's my cousin, but my mom raised him, so I called my brother. My other brother called me and said that he had been in a wreck, and I could just tell by his voice it was bad. The whole way to the hospital, nobody was talking to me, and I just knew. I just knew.
Yeah.
And when I got there and I saw their faces, I instantly knew, and I lost it. And I'll never forget sitting on that bench outside that hospital, I was in another world. I don't even know how to explain it. I was in disbelief. I was in shock. I was hurt. So many emotions. And we all just kind of sat there the rest of the night like that. It's numbing.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely numbing. And it's like, how do you pick yourself up from that? We do every day,
Yeah.
but it's hard.
Completely agree. Like I said, some of the losses that I've gone through have literally lost or caused me to lose myself in them. I think it's something that a lot of people don't understand that don't deal with some of these issues is how much we fight ourselves dealing with them. Like,
That's so true.
there's often times that we feel ashamed to be as sad as we are. We feel worthless because we can't pick ourselves back up, or because we're letting this thing affect us so much, or because the root of the problem is beating down on ourselves, or being worried how we look and what we think and all this type of stuff.
Or we feel
So
like
many
we're
people.
a burden to the people that we love, right? We feel like they would be better off if we weren't like this.
Agreed.
And one of the things that I wanted to touch on was, I don't know if a lot of people know what intrusive thoughts are, but intrusive thoughts are these thoughts that come into your mind. They're not anything, it doesn't reflect on who you are as a person. It's just this random thought that your mind puts out there. And for me, with OCD, that random thought gets played a lot. It constantly gets played. So, for instance, if I think like everyone's mad at me, that's one of my things. Everybody's mad at me always. So in my head, I'm like, nobody likes you. Everybody's mad at you. and I just keep repeating these things over and over and over in my head to the point where I convince myself that, you know, I'm a burden to everybody. I'm worthless. I'm this and that. And it really sucks. And then that's when the compulsions start, right? Because the obsession is the thoughts in my head. The compulsion is whatever I do to try to, I guess, cope with those. So it could be something like chewing my nails or picking my skin or like wiping the same counter down 5 times. Or it's always something different. It's not always
Yeah.
the same triggers and it's not always the same compulsions, but it is always completely exhausting.
Howdy.
What's
What are you
going
doing
on,
here?
guys?
Just
So
talking about some issues.
no, I've been watching. I think it's great. I gotta admit though, it's a little different being on the other side. One of the parts I was finding really frustrating is I was reading the comments, and then other comments were showing up on the screen. So people, I get it. I 100% get it. That is a weird thing. But no, I wanted to jump in here because this is one of those conversations that we really need to have. Like, one of the things that you guys were touching on a minute ago was nobody's thought of, like, and there was a comment about it that, you know, thinking about how other people are handling the situation that already had mental health illness, you know, mental health issues before all this happened. What is the what happens now to them, right?
Well, I can attest to you that people like me who have actually been through that are really struggling.
I can only imagine.
I personally, I'm such an introvert that I felt like some of this isolation stuff was somewhat easier on me. But everybody's different and everybody's going to react to all of it differently.
Yeah, I think introverts are probably struggling the worst, right?
Some of them, yeah.
We're used to, because I'm a bit of an introvert myself, and we're used to being alone. We're used to being with our thoughts and things like that. But we're not even we are used to being alone on this level. So it's kind of a trip.
Well, for
But
me,
you
I
know,
mean, I'm used
go
to
ahead.
being alone, but I'm used to being able to see my family. I mean,
Right.
there are people that I did go around, you know, my mom and my family like that I'm not getting to see now, and it's I didn't really realize how, I guess, how destructive that kind of isolation can be. We
I
need
think
people.
I think for me, what really made it clear, for at least for me, was watching how, when, like, last year's spring break, you know, my son went on spring break from school, and then this whole thing started ramping up, or not last year, but when spring break hit, and they never went back to school after spring break. Like, they were done. um, and at first it was great, right? Like, he was happy as could be, you know, he didn't have to go back to school. The school couldn't figure out in time how to deal with it. But as the weeks, or as the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months, all of a sudden it wasn't cool anymore. All of a sudden I saw his attitude change, I saw his demeanor change, and I saw that, you know, my son was really struggling with this level of isolation, right? And I can only imagine that it is very, very difficult for somebody with, you know, mental health issues, that especially introverts, especially people that don't like to um, deal with people on a regular basis, but they have those core people that they deal with, and now those are taken away from them. Like, that's got to be devastating.
Yeah.
It
And yeah,
is.
what Christopher's saying about your support system and the people that we keep close, you know, I think one of the things we tend to forget is, like, my support system is very small, right? Most people's are actually pretty small, but when those people are cut out of your daily life and you're left with conversations like this, it makes it really, really difficult.
Well, and like I said before too, I think that I personally pushed a lot of people away because it was easier for me to push them away than to have a visit with them where I sat 6 feet away and my kids couldn't go run up in their grandmother's lap, or they couldn't give my dad the big squeeze that they always give him. And it hurt me so much that it was almost just easier for me to just hibernate and just pretend like it wasn't happening.
No, I think that's a real issue. Um, I also think it's important to realize, guys, that a positive mindset doesn't mean that you're not affected by these things, right? Like I talk a lot about my mindset, right? A lot about how I start my day and the routine that I go through and how I am affirmations and how meditation helps me and all these things. But this doesn't mean that I'm free of these concerns. This doesn't mean that I walk around in some state of bliss all day long every day. Well, the reality is no matter how positive your mindset is, no matter how happy your life is or how content you are with things, everybody is affected in one way or another. Everybody has bad days. And I'm tired of the stigmatism wrapped around it, right? Like that, Mike is a great example of somebody I know gets this because, Mike's been, we have a lot of shared history between him and I. It's really kind of interesting and a lot of shared beliefs, outside of politics. We don't agree on much there. But it's that ability to go through those bad days and maintain that positive attitude that really becomes powerful. Have you get what I'm saying, Mike?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's finding, like I talked about last week, you got to break cycles. Every negative thought in our head, if we allow it to be, is a cycle. A lot of these things, anxiety, fear, depression, it's a cycle that feeds itself. Everybody's familiar with the phrase misery loves company, right?
Yes.
And we have to recognize our triggers. We have to recognize the cycles of thought that we normally go down, and we have to find ways to intervene. For some of us, that's mindfulness exercises, being in the now, drawing ourselves out of our head. For some of us, it's knowing to not react too quickly, knowing to breathe, and each situation and each person is somewhat different, but I think knowing yourself and working on yourself really helps you interact with the world and interact with your own head and everything in between.
Christopher, well, there was a question up just a second ago that just got pulled down, but it was asking Mike, as a bit of an introvert, how has the coronavirus lockdowns affected you?
So, if I'm being honest, most people are bored or sick that they're stuck at home or all these other effects, and a lot of that's not really affecting me, but just like everybody has different concerns and different worries, I have a lot of elderly relatives that are not doing well because of it. I have a grandfather who's in a skilled nursing facility who couldn't get visitors for months, and it's playing tolls on him, and just how I care about others and my concern for others plays a big part in how this has taken a toll on me rather than how this directly affects myself.
So to that, you sound like a very empathetic person and seeing what everybody else is dealing with. So I know a lot of empathetic people, and empathy is a wonderful quality. But in times like this, for all of you that are that kind of person, you have to be very, very careful. You have to really watch yourself because everybody is struggling and everybody's got something going on. So if you are a person like Mike is, I'm the same way, right? Like I literally feel when people are struggling. It's the reason I want to help people so much, right? Like it bothers me. And I know Kristen's the exact same way. So if you're one of those people like us, then I know right now it's very, very important that we stay true to ourselves and we keep a watchful eye on our own mental health and how we're feeling about things.
So I'm not sure how to answer Christopher here because we all have different terminologies for things, and I'm not quite sure what he's referring to as pain bodies. I don't know if he's referring to physical pain or emotional pain, but you have to work through it all in its own terms.
John Lee said, some days we need to realize that reaching out in itself is a huge step for getting ourselves out of our suffering. Just as we reach out, we must also look for those who reach out to us.
Yeah.
But it's hard. I mean, like, for myself, I can't speak for everyone, but for myself, it's hard for me to reach out because there's like such a fine line between being a negative Nancy and reaching out when you need help, because like I always need help. I always want to talk about something. So it's like I don't want to be that person that's just like constantly, I'm sad, and be a burden to somebody else.
Yeah.
So I get what you're saying. Like, we have to be mindful of that. Don't let your mind tell you that other people don't care about you. Don't be afraid to reach out because your mind is playing tricks on you and telling you lies.
Yeah. Another thing too is even though we all have different baselines, like you always have something going on, right? We all have heightened times where we're not at our middle ground. We're struggling to be our normal selves. We're struggling to deal with things the way we normally do. And I think that's when we have to know within ourselves to reach out. Because, yeah, there's a lot that we take on ourselves. It's all about self work. We need to be able to work things through things for ourselves, and we need to not, a lot of times when we're afraid to reach out, that's us giving into the voice, But we need to realize when we've taken too much, when we're struggling and need that help. Doesn't matter if we have a different baseline, we all know when we're at a tipping point.
Agreed.
Michelle said something about noticing a huge difference in her ability to stay focused. That comment. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I love that book so much, because I found for myself that staying present, like Mike talked about mindfulness and forcing yourself into presence.
Mm-hmm.
I found for myself anyways, learning this habit to be the greatest tool to eliminating the worry, the stress, the anxiety, that feeling of like, I got 10 million things to do. And as I got better and better at that practice alone, it really made a drastic impact in my life. And Nicole says she hates reaching out. And this is one of the reasons why, like in several of my morning thought videos, I've talked about reach out to the people in your life on a regular basis, right? Like check on people right now, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's good for you too. Because the moment you reach out to somebody, it opens the door to that conversation to where if they're struggling, you can open up about the fact that you're struggling too. And it's okay to struggle. I think way too many of us, we let our bravado or our ego or our thoughts about what we are stop us from showing any amount of vulnerability at all. What's this comment, Kristen?
I don't have my contacts in, so I'm struggling to read it.
It says we are all going through something, so don't be afraid to ask or talk about it. You aren't going through something someone else isn't going through or went through. That's very true. We learn from each other's experiences, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so many times, I don't know about you guys, but so many times in like when I was really having a hard time, I just needed somebody to listen. I knew they couldn't do anything. I knew that it wasn't going to change anything, but being able to just say it, like, I'm not doing so good. Even just saying that made me feel a little bit better.
There's a lot of people that just in the way like people can be auditory or visual learners, right? There's a lot of people that sort out their own head better when they have somebody to talk to.
That's me.
Lindsay asks, how does anyone deal with their own health or with their own health when they are the roots holding everyone else together? When you're the root holding everything else together, believe me, I can relate to this. As a single dad, I have sole custody of my kids, and there was a lot going on. And I failed at taking care of my own mental health all the time. It was a daily fight, but you have to make that fight. That's a fight you have to be in, because the healthier and the stronger you are, Lindsay, the better it is going to be for all the people that you're trying to hold together.
So, from my point of view, I'm a stay-at-home mom. So, it's really hard for me to take care of myself because, I mean, being a stay-at-home mom, there's not really a lot of praise, right? Like, everybody's always mad at me. Like, they wanted goldfish and I gave them goldfish, so they're going to lose their mind. Or, it's the wrong TV show, or it's always something. And so I have a really hard time with that. I have a really hard time being strong for everybody. A lot of the times it gets to be a lot.
Yeah, being like Patrick said earlier, I'm pretty empathetic, and being that person in your group of friends often leads to you playing somewhat of a counselor figure. So I'm used to being the rock for other people, and it can be its own pressure to maintain yourself in certain people's presence and stuff like that. And I think to some degree it's important for certain relationships. Like as a parent, you want to do that for your kid, but you also need to show them that it's okay to be hurt by things. It's okay to have emotions. It's okay so that when they go through things when they're older, they know that it's a process, and they know that no one's invincible. No one's immune to it. It's a balancing act, just like everything is, but I think you need to see both sides there. And
True.
even in our relationships where we're the rock or the root or things like that, you're going to have those moments where it needs to go both ways. And I've been told that by friends that sometimes I don't open up enough and they can tell I'm struggling. And it's like trying to squeeze water from a stone,
Mm-hmm.
Well, the point that Rhonda makes about, not knowing where the tears come from, I've had those moments in my life, and that's something that's hard for me to even admit. But I guess I've decided to be very transparent with this particular social media family. So I can tell you that from my experience, most of the time it's from holding them back and holding things in for so long that eventually they just come from somewhere that they just come. And, I don't feel bad about being alone. I like my alone time. It's not something that I think is a negative thing at all. So for me, I don't need the answer. What's up, buddy? As far as where they come from. Hey, Chuck, how you doing, brother? Chuck says he's an extrovert around people, but he's learned to handle being alone without an extremely small support group. Yeah, Chuck, I'm the same way, man. It's fun to get around people sometimes. I don't really like large groups of people, but I don't mind being around a small group of people. But yeah, that's a tough one.
Good
What I
friends
find,
help, no matter how many you
yeah,
have.
that's what I was gonna say is I find myself like drawn to people like who make me laugh because um there's a really long time where I physically could not laugh. And that sounds like crazy to people, and it's not that I didn't think things were funny. I don't know what it was. I just physically couldn't laugh. So, like one of my really good friends is absolutely hilarious. And I think that that's one of the best qualities about her is because she makes me laugh, Like she gives me that I can't give myself. So I think that you're right. Like, even just having one or two good friends that get you and that, can make you laugh and bring you out of those dark places, or
And I know,
family members that, can do that for you, it's awesome.
and I know that sometimes just having one person that you feel understands or cares or whatever it may be, that one person can make a huge difference. And that's why Pat tells us to reach out to people.
What's interesting from my perspective, and one of the intrusive thoughts that I have is, I convince myself that my family loves me because they have to, not because I'm a good person or I'm fun to be around or anything like that. They love me because they have to. So even though when family tries to be there for me as a support system, it's like, oh, well, you're so and so, you have to love me, right? And and it's crazy. That sounds crazy because those are the people that care about me the most. But I almost discredit that, and I don't really understand why I do it. Um, Maybe just seeking validation or whatnot, but that is, one of the things that I struggle with.
Yeah. As
We all
somebody
have.
that had, oh, go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Pat.
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh, as somebody that's had a lot of family struggles, and I've heard and seen a lot of other people's stories, family isn't always there. And I don't think we often realize that there are people that go without their families. I've, and it can be because of rifts, it can be because of a bunch of things, but not everybody has their family there, and appreciate it. I know it's a struggle, and I know you always think that they have to, but appreciate what you have because we won't always have all of our family there, and I've seen a lot of people lose it, you
That's
know?
true. It's definitely true. Um, and I know that what those things in my head tell me are 100% lies. It's not that I for 1 second believe it. It's just sometimes I don't know how to break that cycle when my mind is saying that.
Right. And I think that's a
Says,
struggle we all deal with, is figuring out how to hijack back our own minds from those cycles.
right. Somebody just made a point that you need to change your environment sometimes, positive people in your life. But yeah, I agree. I mean, that is part of protecting your peace, is knowing when someone is toxic to you. And I'm not talking about just family or anything in particular, but you know, you do need to protect your peace because not everybody, I don't know how to say this, you're not everybody's cup of tea, and vice
Right.
versa. And that's just life. Like, you don't have to love everybody, you don't have to like everybody. So, just always, if there's something in your life that is weighing you down, it's okay to protect your peace and step away. And it's not forever, right? I mean, people have fights and make up all the time.
Right.
So definitely, if you're already having a hard time protecting your peace, don't, you know, attach yourself to people who make it worse.
I think it's
Guys,
also,
I
oh,
just
go
want to
ahead.
jump in real quick. Everything that we talk about, whether it's being a little bit better today versus than you were yesterday, whether it's protecting your peace, whether it's reaching out to your friends and your loved ones, even the way we talk about politics, it is all about improving your mental health. It all ties together, you guys. So I want to thank Kristen and Mike for jumping on here and doing a show for you guys. And thank you for allowing me to jump on and do it with you. I'm actually going to jump out of here right now. I have something I have to take care of before that thing going across the bottom happens. So I will see you guys then. But thank you guys. I appreciate you guys very, very much.
See you
And
later.
Kristen, your family loves you because you are amazing, just so you know.
Bye. So, I forgot what we were talking about.
I was just going to say that just like protecting your peace in conversations with others is important, a lot of those, finding ways out of your cycles in your own head is you got to protect your peace from your own intrusive thoughts and from your own, negative voices. And that's what a lot of the I am affirmations and, the power of words is about.
It's crazy to me because I've always felt like such a burden with all of my struggles, and I recently voiced that opinion to someone and it really hurt them because they felt like, I think they felt like maybe they made me feel like a burden, or like I was implying that, and it wasn't that at all.
Right.
Because this person has never done anything but show me 100% love, unconditional. It wasn't about them. And that's another thing that I want people to realize. When you're dealing with someone with mental health issues, their reactions are not about you. It's not. They're fighting in their own mind, and you just happen to be there. And so all of these things, like me feeling like, people are mad at me, which is like most of the time not true, or me feeling like I'm not good enough, or me feeling like I'm a burden to people. It's not that it's true. It's not that I really think these people feel that way about me at all. It's just one of those lies, one of those awesome lies that my mind makes up.
I think that's important to touch on because a lot of people, that's why we're afraid sometimes to talk to the people closest to us, is so that they don't feel like we're putting it on them, because we know it's a struggle within ourselves, right? um, I think it's important to touch on so that other people can react better when those walls finally do come down. This is one of the aspects of communication our society needs to work on, is not only reaching out but receiving those people well when they do reach out, because everybody reaches out differently. And if we are in a defensive position where we take them reaching out as an attack, them trying to say what's wrong with them as an attack on us, we may drag them further away. We may misconstrue their need for help. A whole bunch of bad things can happen. But if we're more open to that and realizing that somebody coming to us with a problem is maybe just clearing their mind, maybe
Right.
it's a chance to improve, maybe it's, them just saying, hey, this is what's going on with me, this is why I'm not acting right today, and I'm just trying to tell you that. And if we have that open mind to see it those different ways, it can help communication too.
One of my biggest pet peeves is that when I talk to people, they think that I'm talking to them because I want them to fix me or to fix my problems. Like I can come and say, "Oh my gosh, blah blah blah," and they'll, "Oh, well, you should have done this," or "Oh, you should do this," and then when I don't take that advice, it's like they dismiss me, right? Like, "Oh, well, you didn't listen to me." Um, I'm not talking to get someone. I'm not a project. Like I
Right.
don't want somebody to just want to work on me and want to fix me. Like I just want somebody to listen and care. That's literally all it is. And I think that and I don't think it's ill in nature when they do it. I think they genuinely want to help.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't understand. They've never been there. They don't get it, right? Like they think they're helping by giving us solutions. But the truth is we really know what we want to do anyways, or we really know, we don't need somebody else to tell us.
Well, I think there's an important lesson on both sides there, right? There's the lesson for the people that get approached and, they need to, I lost my point, but
Just
it's a
listen.
thing
They
on,
need to listen.
Yeah, they need to listen, but the person that's giving out this advice needs to understand that if they're trying to fix the problem, it's because they care, and that it's not always, feeling like they're incapable or that they need help. They care, so they're wrapped up and they want to fix it, even if that's not the right reaction.
Right. Well, and it's not even that it's not the right reaction. What is the right reaction,
Yeah.
It's just, it's hard because in our heads, all this stuff that they're telling us, we've already ran that through our minds, right? We've already thought about every possible outcome. And I mean, maybe they might come up with something that I haven't thought of, but it's really mostly I just need somebody to listen and care and say, hey, it's going to be okay.
And
Like
like you
that's
said earlier, sometimes just getting things out helps you organize your own mind and deal with it.
right. Like this morning, Mike and I were talking about our mental health struggles. That's how this got here. And we were talking about different techniques that we've learned. And one of the things we were talking about is grounding. Like when I lay in bed at night, I might, like he said the same thing, touch the fabric, feel the fabric. I'll smell the sheets, just things like that to bring me out of my head.
Yeah.
But having that conversation with someone other than Mike who did not understand mental health, they probably would think I'm crazy that I'm sniffing my sheets. But it's that's just an example. It's really, really hard to explain to somebody who hasn't dealt with this kind of stuff, like where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's one of many mental health techniques that are called mindfulness that are meant to draw you out of your head and make you pay attention to something in your physical environment to draw you into the now.
Right. Kind of like
And
the deep breath thing.
a lot of people with anxiety, a lot of people with especially social anxiety or sleep problems, PTSD, mindfulness techniques help a lot of people, and they tie very closely with the whole concept of being in the now.
One of the things I did want to touch on, if you don't have mental health problems, you might not realize that medicine does not fix everything. A lot of times people see someone who's struggling and they're like, oh, they're off their meds, or oh, their meds are messed up or something. And it really is so discouraging when you've tried everything and you've been to doctors your entire life and you just want somebody to fix you. And nobody can do that because these medicines, they might make it to where you don't have anxiety attacks all the time. But like, for instance, one of the main things used to treat OCD or anxiety is sertraline. And sertraline certainly does help in a lot of ways. But as far as the compulsions, it almost makes it worse. Like somebody who doesn't typically have those compulsions as far as like picking skin or wiping stuff down, they might have that with sertraline. So it creates a whole nother problem. It also makes you want to eat a lot, which is like not good. So it's not a fix all. It's not like these people don't want to go to the doctor and get help, because they do. Like, I would love nothing more than to find the perfect cure. But it's number one, it's not in medicine, I don't think. I think it comes from a lot of self-growth and a lot of work, and that's really hard to do because doing the work is not fun when you start really looking at yourself and see some things that aren't so pretty. But I really do, like, the older I get, the more I realize that is the only way to find a way out, is to do the work, to take care of yourself. Communication and honesty, and those are all beneficial things when you are trying to get out of your head and figure out a way out.
Yeah. And I think it's important to remind both people going through stuff and people that know people going through stuff that it's a long road.
It is
There's
a
many
very long
steps
road.
to take there's working on every issue individually, there's going to be steps backwards. It's a continual long process, and it's almost impossible not to deal with a trigger or a new trauma somewhere along the way. But we can get there over time. It's not impossible.
It's not. And every day is, a new opportunity. Like, I know most of my days, as far as like anxiety wise, aren't great. I know they're not great, but I do wake up every day hopeful. I try my best to stay in a positive mindset. I get up and I listen to Patrick and his morning thoughts and, all those things. I try to always wake up and greet my kids, like good morning, and just start off the day right. It does help a lot. And even if I get triggered, by lunchtime, I still had a couple hours where I was, it was a good time. It was a good couple hours.
I agree.
So it's an effort. It's not like I just get to wake up and be like, oh, today I'm happy. It's an effort. I have to consciously be happy. It's crazy.
That's why you do your affirmations and do something to center yourself and get going. Morning thoughts is a great thing. But I think we should start wrapping up here. I believe
definitely.
Patrick has a special guest to go live with on a special edition of Live with Breathe America after we wrap up here. So, do you have any closing thoughts?
I would say for everyone out there, just try to be mindful that, Mike and I are here telling our story, so you know what we're going through. There's a lot of people out there who aren't going to tell their story. They're not going to tell you what they're going through. So be mindful of your words in the comments, and just like Patrick always says, be kind to one another, lift yourself up and lift others up, and be better today than you were yesterday.
And I guess for my closing thoughts, I just want to remind everybody out there, I've seen a lot of comments referring to this as their new family, and I feel the same. I love you all, and I hope you know that if you're dealing with anything, there's people here willing to listen.
There's people here that care.
If you don't have that close person in your life, we're here. That's part of what Breathe America is, at least to me.
Absolutely.
And reach out.
100%. My inbox is always open. So.
Same here.
Have a great night, everyone. And enjoy the show coming up.
Yeah. Night,
Thank
everybody.
you, Mike. Good night.
Thanks, Kristen. Good night.
Bye.